You know, the first hour of your day programs your gut, your immune system, and your energy. But you miss it, and you're going to be spending the rest of the day playing catch up. And today on the Gut Insiders, Dr. B is going to show you how to get it right. Welcome back to the Gut Insiders. I'm Chuck Carroll, and with me is gastroenterologist and now three-time New York Times bestselling author and the guy who made me realize that mornings were quietly wrecking my gut, the one and only Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. Thanks for being here, man.
Chuck, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. My younger self needed this episode, and I'm pretty sure you did too at some points.
Desperately, my friend, desperately. And so if you're listening to this, you're watching this and you're thinking, well, look, you know, I eat pretty well, but my mornings, they still feel rough. This episode is for you. And so today we're talking about the circadian rhythm, and not the shot clock, but the gut clock, and how to build a morning routine that actually supports digestion, energy, and inflammation without waking up at 4 a.m. for one of those hippy dippy chants, my friend.
I'm all for those hippy dippy chants, but that being said, the 4 a.m. part is unnecessary, and we can show people, Chuck, during this episode how to pull it off in an hour or less. And we'll actually give you the points to focus on the most.
When most people hear circadian rhythm, they think about sleep, but as you were kind of explaining to me, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah, that's a total misunderstanding, Chuck. I mean, sleep is one factor, but circadian rhythm is a much bigger thing that governs literally every second of our day, of our entire life. And it plays a role in our digestion, our immune activity, our gut motility, the way our intestines move, our blood sugar response after a meal, even how your microbiome behaves across the day. So I want everyone to know that there's two main hormones that basically act like the hands on a clock, right? So if you were to look at a clock, you see those hands, and you're like, oh, I know exactly what time it is. Well, your body is looking at these two hands, which are these two hormones, to know exactly what time of day it is. And those two hormones are cortisol and melatonin. So the way that this works is that in the morning, and I want to be like, this is an important point for the listeners, because this is what we're going to be basically moving towards throughout this entire conversation today. In the morning, we want cortisol to be high and we want melatonin to be low. That is exactly the formula that your body needs for optimal function for the rest of the day.
All right, hold on, man. Let me jump in here. I thought that cortisol was like kind of like the bad guy. Isn't that the stress hormone?
Yes, it is in fact the stress hormone. And, you know, I mean, look, cortisol, like if you listen to the drum beat out there, right? It makes it sound like cortisol is always bad. Whoa. Not so fast, my friend. That is not actually the truth. So cortisol is only bad when it's mistimed, when it's out of rhythm. Morning cortisol in rhythm is essential. It wakes up your brain. It stimulates your gut motility. It mobilizes your energy supply. And it signals to your immune system that it's daytime.
All right, I got you. That's a lot, but like let's dive a little bit deeper into the cortisol. So like what are the true effects on the gut that cortisol has?
Okay, so let's like zoom in. Let's pull out our microscope. We're going to zoom in on the gut, and basically what you would find is that literally your gut barrier cells, the lining of your intestine, have cortisol receptors. Your immune cells have cortisol receptors. So in the morning, as cortisol rises, this is actually playing a really important role in regulating your gut barrier. And what we know, which this is what was discussed in my new book, Plant Power Plus, is that when you enhance the gut barrier and you make it stronger, it actually helps both the immune system and the gut microbiome. So the result from this cortisol that we get in the morning is that it synchronizes the body, including all of these parts, the microbes, the gut barrier, and the immune system. And even our gut motility starts to fall in alignment. So this is part of why we get increased colon contractions in the morning. Chuck, basically what I'm saying is that our morning cortisol, our circadian rhythm, is explaining the reason why people go and have a great, healthy morning bowel movement to start their day. So with that in mind, like this is something that's worth us paying attention to. And I should add too that like what's happening in the microbiome in response to this like formula, high cortisol, low melatonin, what's happening in the microbiome is a shift in the microbes towards more microbes that are able to produce short chain fatty acids. So bottom line, when cortisol is in sync, we have a healthier microbiome. We have a stronger gut barrier that is a protected immune system that is less reactive. And now we are really truly in our rhythm.
And when all of that stuff isn't happening, what is happening with us?
If everything is out of whack, out of rhythm, then the cortisol that we're looking for in the morning, it's not there. It gets blunted or it ends up being mistimed. And then you lose the coordination that comes from that morning cortisol being there on a daily basis. So basically, motility ends up becoming irregular. That could be diarrhea, that could be constipation. Our immune signaling at the gut barrier becomes noisy. That can create inflammation. Our gut barrier actually starts to break down, increase gut permeability, and then the unfortunately gut microbiome starts to shift towards a more inflammatory profile. So, and the way that this could manifest is you might wake up groggy, you might feel bloated, you might feel anxious or constipated, and then you're going to spend the rest of the day chasing caffeine, chasing carbs because your body is not in rhythm.
You coming to me with a personal attack with the caffeine mention, bro? I feel a little under
No.
attack here, man. A little bit, a little bit.
Who's the world's greatest lover of coffee, Chuck? You know it's me, buddy.
I know that you love you some caffeine, but I also know that you have some like non-negotiables when it comes to your morning routine that I don't necessarily have. So I don't know. I'm taking it personally right now.
I think by the end of this episode, you'll have those non-negotiables too, Chuck. So, and let's dig into this a little bit because like there's a study that was quite fascinating that people need to hear about, published in the journal Cell, which is like literally one of the top medical journals that exists. And in this study, basically, like it changed how we think about circadian rhythm in the gut. So what they showed is that your gut microbiome isn't just like passively sitting there reacting to food, that actually there are rhythms that exist within the microbiome. So different microbes are basically like rising and falling at specific time points throughout the day. In fact, they actually found that more than half of our microbes are actually following a circadian pattern. Literally 60% of our microbes are following a circadian pattern. So at specific time points, they're growing, they're fermenting fiber, they're producing metabolites that our body needs at that specific time. So the daytime microbes are basically there to help us to process fiber, to produce short chain fatty acids, for energy metabolism, for protein metabolism. Meanwhile, at night, the microbes are more focused on detoxification, repair, and cleanup.
This sounds like a pretty good example of what you and I have talked about previously on the exam room is that the body really thrives on a routine. And what you're explaining here is that the microbes are really, they're basically running on a schedule.
Yeah, they are. And that schedule allows them to stay organized and to basically help us to fulfill our daily goals, which is basically like having energy, having focus, doing tasks, like the demands of the real world that we all have. Your microbes want to be a part of that story. They want to help you achieve that. And the problem is, if they don't have a schedule, if they're just sitting there stuck, constantly reacting, that's chaos. And that is really where we run into issues. Now, going back to the study, Chuck, there were some interesting things that happened because basically what they did is they intentionally disrupted the circadian rhythm. And they found that things like basically fell out of alignment. So there was irregular sleep. They actually found that the microbial rhythms actually like flattened out. So now like the microbes are not able to like meet you where you need them during the day. The diversity within the gut microbiome, it actually dropped when they were disrupting these microbes. So the species started to like basically shift towards ones that are more associated with inflammation, metabolic dysfunction. The microbiome, when it's out of sync, it starts to really struggle.
You're talking about like jet lag to a T here. You know, it's like if the microbiome, it sounds like you're painting a picture. You're talking about the microbiome, but bro, I'm telling you, with the jet lag, the whole body feels out of sync. But in this case, it's the microbiome we're focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a perfect way to put it, to be honest with you. These jet lagged microbes, they're just like us. They're tired, they're weak, they're making poor food choices, they're like not able to do their job, and they're less productive in their ability to support our gut barrier and our immune system.
All right. So, how do we know then what actually matters for the body?
Okay, so check this out. Like everything that I've described so far was done in animal models. All right. Obviously, we're not animals, we're humans, but they did a human study too. So they basically flew people where they had multiple hours worth of jet lag. Like they basically flew across the ocean and these people were severely jet lagged. And then they took stool specimens from these people when they were jet lagged and their circadian rhythm was disrupted. And they transplanted the human microbiome into mice. And importantly, these mice, they were not jet lagged. They had normal sleep, normal light exposure, normal diets.
All right. And let me guess here. I'm just coming with the patient perspective, but I can only assume that things then went sideways.
Yes, exactly. So even though the mice were living in a healthy environment, they personally weren't jet lagged. When you transplanted the jet lagged microbiome from humans into these mice, they developed worse blood sugar and they gained more weight just from inheriting a jet lagged microbiome.
Oh, that's fascinating. So let me see if I got this straight. Let me unpack this here as best as I can. So the jet lagged humans, they had jet lagged microbes, like we were talking about, obviously. And then they took those jet lagged microbes and they transferred them over to the mice who were just perfectly healthy, not jet lagged at all. And then all of the sudden, the mice, their blood sugar spikes, the mice start gaining weight. And then the jet lagged microbes, they were enough to jack up the metabolism of the mice as well.
Yes, exactly. And this is important because this is going beyond something that, like, you could say, oh, that's just a correlation, right? This actually shows the microbes being responsible, that circadian disruption can change the microbiome in a way that actually drives inflammation and metabolic disease.
All right. Now, I do want to kind of throw you a little bit of a curveball here, and
Uh,
just ask you, like, what can we infer from this? Because we are taking human microbes and we're like transplanting them into a non-human species here. So, are those results? Because I've heard mixed messages about this. Are those results something that we should still be hanging our hat on?
right. So one study never proves everything, Chuck.
Right.
This is a great question that you're asking me. And what you need to know is, okay, so this study is showing us mechanistically what happens in a jet lagged human to their microbiome shifts, and what the effects are in a mouse. But what's another form of jet lag in humans that's not literally, we don't call it jet lag? Shift work.
Mm.
What they've shown in multiple studies at this point is that shift workers, they actually are more likely to develop metabolic diseases, more likely to, they have higher rates of obesity, they have significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and they have higher levels of inflammation.
I wonder if there's a way to kind of offset that, like just I don't know, maybe that would require like a sun lamp. I don't know to how to just like counter program the ill effects of being a shift worker. That's a question that I've heard so many times since I've entered this health space. So maybe we could save that and revisit it in a future episode. But I want to go back to the heart of today's topic, and that is, the the circadian rhythm here. And one of the things that I've learned from you, especially in your new book, Plant Powered Plus, is that when there's inflammation in the body, generally it means that the gut barrier has been disrupted. And that brings us right to the gut barrier. Talk to me, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, right? Which is that when the microbiome loses its rhythm, it stops producing the things that we need to maintain the gut barrier, the short chain fatty acids, and that the result is basically a disrupted gut barrier, a disrupted microbiome, disrupted immune system that's creating inflammation. So, and the interesting thing about it, Chuck, is this isn't just what is seen in shift workers, that they actually have, Chuck, controlled human experiments where basically what they would do is take these people and they would disrupt their circadian rhythm, like shift their sleep times, all right, by a couple of hours. And this is without changing calories, without changing the duration of sleep. So you still get the same number of hours. We're just going to shift the timing of it all. And in these controlled human studies, you see inflammation rising, you see insulin sensitivity dropping, meaning that they have poor blood sugar control. This is in with just a couple of days.
Oh
So,
man.
when you take the entirety of what we're discussing here, this, jet lag study, jet lag microbiome transplanted into mice, and then you see this like, okay, what's happening in shift workers? And then now here I'm showing you a controlled human study, increasing inflammation and increasing blood sugar. I mean, basically what we're saying is that timing alone is enough to put stress on the immune system.
See, and what you're doing right now, whether you realize it or not, you're just confirming what, I had already experienced. Like the hardest job I ever had was as a fill-in anchor for a national newscast. I don't need to name the company today, but I just remember like it was such a big platform. Of course, I said yes. Well, it was like, well, one day I would be working, 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then they would want me back at 7 o'clock. Like I get one day off, but then I would have to be back at 7 o'clock, and then another day off, and then I'd be in at 11 a.m. And it was just like I didn't know which way was up and which way was down. So you're just confirming that the night shift is really bad. Jet lag, as you talked about, that's really tough on the gut as well. But what about people who aren't working those wacky schedules? What about for folks who are working, just those regular day to day shifts? What does this mean?
Well, I mean, these are all shades of gray. I mean, to be honest with you, I want to go back to what you were just talking about a moment ago, which is that from a professional perspective, you had circadian disruption, right? Show up at one time one day, show up at another time another day, sleep is all over the place. Talk to us. Can you take us back? How did you feel?
Like garbage. Like I was a zombie after the second day. And it's really hard to just say, "Oh, okay, well, I'm going to sleep at this time this day. I'm going to sleep at this time the next day, and this time on the third day." Your body doesn't operate like that. It just doesn't. No matter how tired I was, it was next to impossible for me just to like get off the mic and like go right home, lay down, and go to bed. Your body, like, I need that time to ramp down, and as a result, my sleep duration got shorter and shorter, and my coffee intake grew higher and higher and higher. I mean, we're talking coffee for breakfast, whether breakfast was in the afternoon or whether it was in the middle of the night, it didn't matter. Lots and lots and lots of coffee, very, very, very little sunlight, stressed out immediately as soon as that alarm hit. And I'm talking like I'm hitting snooze like 3 and 4 and 5 times and like rushing out the door, and poof, stress levels way up. I'm sure that a lot of people have felt that way. And I wasn't thinking about my gut at all there. All I'm thinking about is I got to shift, I got to be there, I got to go. I was just simply trying to survive, man.
And what were you eating?
A whole bunch of junk.
Lay it
I
out.
mean,
Lay it out. I want to hear it.
so like taquitos. I mean, we could go the taquito route at 7-Eleven. Even when I was trying to eat healthier, it was a whole lot of like fried pita chips with hummus. It was a whole lot of just grab and go stuff like frozen, not necessarily healthy dinners. It was just like whatever I could get my hands on. There was like no priority put whatsoever into eating a healthy meal at all.
And
Zero.
what was going on with your weight?
The weight was going up and up, baby. I mean, we've talked famously about 10,000 calories a day at Taco Bell. And mind you, I was not working as a reporter at this time, but I mean, I can tell you, I was still working the night shift when I was in peak Taco Bell form, eating 10,000 calories of fast food a day.
Yeah. But because the reason I bring this up, Chuck, is that everything that you're describing, like you don't realize this, right? You just see it as, oh, I was doing my job. I was trying to get through the day. And yes, I was hungry. And because I was hungry, I went and I ate 10,000 calories at Taco Bell. And then I gained a lot of weight, right? Like that's the processing. And what I'm seeing is something that's slightly different, because what I'm seeing is like part of your story here is circadian misalignment.
Mm.
That like basically your circadian was out of whack and it was chaos within the body. And then when it's chaos in the body, like I don't see this as a willpower thing. I see this as this is actually a biological response, because everything that I've shown you up to this point, prior to you sharing your personal story, has shown us that when your circadian is out of rhythm and you have that chaos inside your body, you are going to overeat, you are going to be metabolically out of whack, you are going to gain weight. That is what everything is showing us, and you're going to increase inflammation in your body. And
Yeah.
Chuck, I experienced this too, right? I experienced this too in my own way, not exactly the same, but I would work a 30-hour shift where you start at 7 in the morning, all right, in the ICU, so the intensive care unit, start at 7 in the morning, and you're going to work until 12 noon the following day, or 1 o'clock the following day. And a lot of times you're going the whole time. You don't even have time to stop to eat, and you get done. And I can't believe that, like, I would drive a car home, because when I look back on this, it actually feels like it was not safe, right?
I would
And
imagine you were feeling like downright drunk.
that is like on the spectrum of how I felt,
Yeah.
right? My blood alcohol level was 0, but my ability to drive a car was impaired.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was in Chicago, and I would get to Wrigleyville, and kitty corner from Wrigley Field, this is where I lived. Kitty corner from Wrigley Field is a Taco Bell. It's still there. It's on Addison Street. And I would go to that Taco Bell, and I would get about $30 worth of stuff. I would go home. I would eat the $30 worth of stuff. I don't know how I put that into my body, but I did. What I mean is, like, how do you get like 4,500 calories in your body all at once? That's what I did.
I didn't know you had the same experience.
Dude, and then I would pass out, sleep for 18 hours, wake up, and do it again.
Wow.
So what kind of life is that? And is it so shocking that I ended up 50 pounds overweight and my own metabolic issues, like my own version of a lot of the same problems you're describing? No, it's not.
No. No. The only thing shocking here is that you were a doctor and you were being told that this was your shift. Like that's the craziest daggone thing to me. So, I mean, it basically what terrifies me is like we've got the circadian rhythm now, where it had been just so disrupted and diminished that my dance ability, which is zero, had more rhythm than my circadian rhythm at this point. So let's dig into how to make this thing right. All right. Don't do what it was we were just talking about, my friends. Let's dig into how to make this right and get the gut perfectly timed. Because you mentioned earlier that mornings are about getting cortisol up, melatonin down. So, how do we actually do that?
All right, let's get into the real world and look at like our biology and how our body works. And there, to me, are two main levers that people need to pull in the morning in order to achieve this effect that we want, which is high cortisol and low melatonin. So, and it starts really with light. So, is it such a surprise in a world where the most consistent, predictable thing that exists is the sun, right? Like, we literally know what time it comes up and what time it goes down every single day. And we could go back from like 5,000 years ago and we could tell you exactly what time the sun came up and went down on a specific day. That's how predictable it is. Our body, the way in which it responds, revolves around that. Where basically what happens is morning sunlight becomes, and it doesn't, by the way, it doesn't have to be a clear day, but morning sunlight becomes the thing that our body is searching for to know that the day begins. When that blue light comes through your eye and it bounces off the back of the eye, which is called the retina, that ultimately gets sucked up by the optic nerve and funneled into this part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. And the SCN is basically like your 24-hour clock for your whole body. It's helping you to achieve exactly this formula. I've been describing the cortisol and the melatonin as like the hands of a clock. So the minute that the SCN detects this blue light in the morning, cortisol spikes and melatonin plummets. So you are actually moving towards that formula. That's why morning light is the strongest signal that we have. And so basically, like, that signal is it's daytime. We're now flipping from our nighttime detoxification mode into daytime metabolism and energy mode. And so that bright morning sunlight, like, to show you the power that exists, is that getting that morning sunlight can spike your cortisol levels by 50%. And that's a great thing.
Oh man, you're such a nerd, and I love it. You're so smart. One of these days, I'm going to be half as smart as you. But again, like cortisol is so vilified, but in this case, it's anything but the villain here. It's what we want.
Well, number one, I'm a nerd. Number two, you're street smart. There's different types of smarts out there, Chuck. But anyway, um, yeah, no, morning cortisol. So here's the thing you need to understand is like, okay, so we hear it's like, oh, that's so bad. No, no, it's bad at 3 in the morning when it's not supposed to be there, when it's supposed to be like nothing. And it's basically spiking because you're stressed out and it's waking you up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep. That's the bad version of cortisol. Morning cortisol gives you exactly what you need to start your day. This is why in the morning it's perfection because it helps you feel alert. It stimulates the gut motility, basically warms up the engine, and it tells the immune system that it's time to switch into daytime mode. And by the way, there's one other key player here. This is not just a cortisol thing. The other key thing is serotonin.
Oh, that's the happy hormone, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So serotonin in the brain is actually what affects our mood. And many of the drugs that are used to treat depression, they are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So what they do is they actually boost serotonin levels in the brain. Well, they boost serotonin levels in the gut too. But morning light is one of the most powerful ways for us to manipulate serotonin levels throughout the entire body, both the brain and throughout the rest of our body as well, including your gut. So like in the brain, the serotonin actually affects our mood, our focus, our cognitive endurance, our ability to basically stay focused throughout the entire day. And in the gut, which by the way is where 95% of serotonin exists, it is actually affecting gut motility and it's helping to coordinate our digestion. So, basically what I'm saying to you is that morning light is so important because you're not just raising cortisol levels, you're also lowering melatonin levels and you're also turning on serotonin. And that's why people, between this confluence of factors, these three things all moving in a specific direction at the same time in response to one action, which is getting that light, this is how you end up in a place where it's like having those good regular morning bowel movements, having good steady energy throughout the entire day. And if you do this with consistency, improving our mood, this is why light is the treatment for seasonal affective disorder, Chuck.
Again, like I'm connecting some dots here, man. Like thinking back into my past and like when my diet was out of whack beginning at an early age, that's when I was diagnosed with depression and went on antidepressants. I mean, I was on Prozac when I was in the 7th grade, for goodness sakes. If I only knew then what I know now.
And the thing that's interesting about this is so like literally light is therapy for seasonal affective disorder affecting your mood. So if you do this on a regular basis, you can affect your mood. But like exercise can be treatment for depression as well, which we're going to talk about in a moment as the second circadian lever. But before we go there, there's one last thing that I want to talk about with
Yeah.
like this whole morning light thing,
Yeah.
which is that, Chuck, there's overwhelming evidence. Like they've actually done these studies in college kids where all you got to do is change nothing else. Expose college kids who, by the way, like no surprise, they're a circadian disaster, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I certainly was, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sleep until 12 noon, going to bed at 2 in the morning, blah, 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 blah. Weekends up until 6, whatever.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So in this study, the only thing they did is morning sunlight, and it actually improved their sleep. And there's a reason for this, which is that the serotonin that we produce in the morning when we get that exposure, it turns out that serotonin is the precursor to melatonin, which is the sleepy time hormone. So like basically whatever time you get your morning light, imagine it's 7 a.m., add 14 hours to that. Now it's 9 p.m. You will notice at 9 p.m., you're going to start feeling tired.
Let me see if I can dissect this because now you're saying like, well, if serotonin is the precursor to melatonin and 95% of serotonin is in the gut, doesn't that mean then that we also have melatonin in our gut?
Yes, one of the most interesting things that I discovered in researching my new book, Plant Power Plus, is that we have literally 400 times more melatonin in our gut and than we do in our brain, which
Shut the front door.
yes, feel free to. You can shut that. uh, that particular thing. So, yeah, 400 times more melatonin in the gut than we have in the brain. And the question is like, okay, so why is that there? That's what you're asking me. It turns out that melatonin at night helps to actually flip us into nighttime repair and recovery mode. And that includes how it influences the immune system, but that also includes the influence of melatonin on the gut barrier, helping
Mm.
to repair and restore the gut barrier overnight. So melatonin is actually really, really great for our gut.
So how much melatonin do we actually need?
That almost makes it sound like a supplement question.
Yeah.
And there can be, Chuck, there can be a role for melatonin supplements. There, for example, are studies showing that nighttime melatonin can be associated with improvements in irritable bowel syndrome, improvements in acid reflux. So it's sort of like proving the point. But I think my point is let's start with morning sunlight. And the amount of morning sunlight that you actually need is not as much as you would think. It's a continuum. So there's not this hard cutoff. You need exactly this amount. If you do 5 minutes on a clear day, you will definitely feel the difference. But even on the cloudiest of cloudy days, if you get 30 minutes outside, you are going to give your body what it needs from a light perspective.
I hear you, but what about wintertime though? Because I'm literally just coming from Rochester, Minnesota, where the high temperature, and I'm not even talking about wind chill on some of the days when I was up there, the high temperature was well below zero. Obviously, not going to be spending a lot of time out in the sun outdoors at that point. So, what can a person do if they find themselves in that unfortunate circumstance?
You can get a light box. This is the question that everyone wants to know. I mean, do I prefer for you to go outside? 100%. Because the rays of the sun are diverse, and Chuck, I'm increasingly viewing sunlight as being like conceptually similar to food. There are nutrients that exist that our body is craving and we need. And if we work from home and we never step outside, or the only time that we step outside is to walk to our car on the way to work, then we're not really giving our body what it needs in terms of those nutrients. So, but you could get a light box. And the key here is to search for a light box that has 10,000 lux. That's what your body actually wants. But again, if I had my way, to the best of your ability, you bundle up and you get outside.
All right, man. I mean, you do that when it's, -10 out there, wind chill probably about -25, -30. Let me know how you feel after that. But I got you. I 100% got you. And it's interesting though, because I always thought that when it came to sunlight, really all your body's doing with that is producing vitamin D. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because I can't imagine I'm the only one who had that idea.
Well,
But
Chuck, that actually speaks to my point of the sun being almost like nutrients, like food,
yeah.
because in the morning you don't get the UV rays. It's the UV rays that allow you to produce vitamin D when they come into contact with your skin. All right. You don't get those in the morning. You get those peaking in the afternoon. But in the morning, what you get are the blue rays. And the blue rays are what your actual eye is searching for to know when the day starts. So the body is so smart that it knows the difference between morning light and afternoon light, and they serve a different purpose. So it is also an argument, by the way, to say, don't just get outside in the morning. There's opportunities to get outside throughout the day. And yes, I understand there's a skin cancer conversation. I'm not asking you to burn your skin. Definitely should not burn your skin. But what I am saying is time spent outdoors is rewarded.
All right. Note to self: if we ever start a pro sports league, we're going to name the team Blue Rays. Outstanding. I like that. I want to ask you though, because you said a while ago that there were two levers, right? Morning
Yeah.
light exposure, that's a big one. But what's the second lever?
Yeah. Just the second is gentle movement, like early in the day.
So not necessarily talking about like getting up, running, a half marathon, doing 100 push-ups, 100 pull-ups, 10,000 sit-ups, nothing brutal like that.
No, it doesn't have to be anything like that. You don't need to punish yourself. I mean, basically, even light exercise. So I said that light exposure gets you a 50% bump in your cortisol. That's a good thing. And now what I'm saying is light exercise can add another 25%. This could be a walk, it could be light stretching, anything of that variety. That's enough. Now, if you want to do morning exercise and get more intense, you can get up to a 50% increase with that. So morning is not a bad time for intense exercise either, but you don't need to feel like that's necessary.
All right, analogy time. Light then turns the key to the car, but movement revs the engine.
Oh, I love that, Chuck. Vroom, vroom, baby. Let's go. That's awesome.
I'm learning from the best, baby. Yeah, what happens when you combine the two things? Because I would imagine like you're a big proponent of morning walks. What happens when you put boom the two things together?
Oh man, you're habit stacking. And basically what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for that sweet, clean cortisol rise, that melatonin suppression, and also bumping your serotonin, because the things that contribute to serotonin production include both light exposure and exercise. So we're circling back to this. So this entire formula, more cortisol, more serotonin, less melatonin, you're feeding both and locking that in for optimal circadian rhythm. Gut motility improves, gut microbiome gets the message, shifts to daytime work, no longer you're a nighttime repair.
So what happens though if somebody just like rolls out of bed, grabs a cup of caffeine and sits right down at their computer and starts going to work, doesn't get outside, certainly doesn't get any movement, they're just staying sedentary.
Yeah, I mean, those are the days that you just feel like groggy and foggy all day, that you're reaching for tons and tons of caffeine, but you're chasing it because you never get really caught up. And the gut pays the price, and not to mention, like, you're probably reaching for junk food that you probably shouldn't be eating, like you and I at Taco Bell.
Oh, 100%. And I wonder like if on those days, and we all have them, nobody's perfect, but on those days, I actually have felt anecdotally like caffeine is less effective. It's like I will literally drag myself from cup to cup to cup of coffee, and I just grow more and more tired throughout the course of the afternoon.
That's like whipping the horse, Chuck,
Yeah.
right? Right? It's like a horse, a racehorse, and you're trying to get more out of it, but the poor thing is exhausted and doesn't have anything left. But the rider is basically trying to like push it, push it, push it. That's where you're at when you're flogging yourself with caffeine on those days. And the interesting thing about it is you could be exhausted, you get a bad night's rest, whatever happens. I've been there. I got 4 kids. Like, how many nights was I up with the kids?
Right.
Right. And if you wake up the next day and you follow this protocol, get outside, get your exercise. I know you don't feel like you want to do that, but do it. I'm telling you, you will feel so much better for the rest of the day. It's not going to be your sharpest, best day because you didn't sleep last night, but it will be so much better than the groggy, foggy, low energy, frustrated, anxious, like, that's the way you feel when you have a bad night's rest.
Absolutely, man. Groggy and foggy. All right, I can play rhyme time too. So let's get tactical and practical. So, what does an ideal morning actually look like in terms of getting that gut clock set for the day?
All right, you're good at what you do, Chuck. So I want to move through a couple of different things to basically build your morning, and I'm going to go in order. Okay, so we can move reasonably quick here. Number one, consistent wake time. All right, so consistency is always rewarded, Chuck.
Even on weekends?
Yeah, especially on the weekends, because that's when you actually are making the moves, right? It's easy Monday through Friday to like set your clock at a specific time, but it's the weekend where the discipline is what's necessary, and then it ultimately gets rewarded, because then your body creates this daily rhythm 7 days a week where the wake time is consistent. The gut is able to anticipate what you're going to do at specific times: food, movement, bowel movements, all of it.
So there's a segment of the population that are known as weekday poopers. No matter what it seems they try, they just can't poop on the weekends. But maybe, just maybe, this could be the key to that.
Yeah, exactly. Look, the gut loves a routine. These things that we're talking about, pumping the cortisol, pumping the serotonin to increase gut motility. For every single person out there, whether you are struggling with constipation on a daily basis, or you're the person who finds that on the weekends, your bowels are out of whack, you need to think about this. This is an opportunity.
All right, bowels out of whack sets us up perfectly to talk about number two on the list, which probably isn't the bowels. What comes next?
Yeah, I mean, so after you wake up, the first thing I would do is hydrate. It's so simple. Like, get a couple of glasses of water and start pounding them because your gut is dehydrated.
Coffee wouldn't count in this case?
Well, so like I love obviously I love coffee, but timing of coffee actually is quite important. So it's not that I have a problem with drinking coffee or that I think it's dehydrating you. That's not the case. But it's more so to say that the timing is important because the real reason that I like to actually delay the coffee is to allow the body's natural cortisol rise to happen first.
All right, let me stop you there. Unpack that. Like, what is the correlation between the two?
Okay, so when you wake up and you get your morning light, your brain is basically programmed to start to pump the cortisol up. And you want to give your body the opportunity to actually do that. So that cortisol rise is what ultimately will wake up your gut, stimulate motility, and set your energy for the rest of the day. But if you hit it with caffeine immediately, like if you basically say, hey, I can't wait to get outside, I'm going to do this caffeine right now, unfortunately, you can blunt that response that you're searching for because you've already started to affect your morning cortisol. So you're diminishing those returns that you get from the natural light. You might feel awake, but the underlying rhythm won't be locked in as cleanly as it would have been if you had just waited a while on your coffee.
So that's like borrowing energy from the coffee versus building it naturally.
Exactly. So, like, to me, let light do the heavy lifting in the morning and let that come first. And then once you have your morning light exposure, ideally paired with some movement, that's when the coffee actually, so you've basically increased the cortisol right there on its own in a natural way. Layer the coffee on top of that for added effect.
And the gut seems to like that better, right?
Much better.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because
Yeah.
digestion feels smoother, bowel movements are more predictable, and you're less likely to feel that wired but tired feeling later in the day.
All right, kids, grab your pen and paper and write this down. Water, light, then coffee.
That's the sequence, Chuck.
Love it. All right. So you said light is huge. How soon are we talking, like between when the alarm goes off and when we should be outside trying to soak up some rays?
All right. Any time is accepted. So don't feel like, oh, I missed my opportunity. I can't do this. But the earlier, the better. And ideally within the first 60 minutes.
All right. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is not just about feeling awake, right?
No, because morning light actually is telling the brain to shut down the melatonin, turn the cortisol on, and start pumping the serotonin. And all of this is waking up the gut and having these effects throughout our entire body.
So it's like, as you said, like this is your gut, but through your eyes.
Yes, is it interesting to just think that? I mean, it kind of makes so much sense, right? Like, there is no more clear rhythm in the universe than the rise and fall of the sun on planet Earth. And we have attached ourselves to that, where light through the eyes sets the clock for the entire body, which affects all of the cells throughout our body. It also affects more than 50% of our genetic code and 60% of our microbes. So, and not to mention, it's setting the stage for great sleep tonight.
Amen for that, brother. I love me some great sleep. So if light then is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the morning, where does the movement part actually fit in? Because I know like there's a lot of people who feel like their mornings are already packed to the gills and they can't fit another thing in.
This is a perfect opportunity for habit stacking. So instead of trying to do everything separately, you combine these different things that you're trying to achieve. These are the two most powerful levers that exist, light and exercise. And if you put them together, think about the power that exists there.
All right. And give me an example of that.
Well, like you could do a simple outdoor walk. I love to take a walk with my wife and my kids in the morning. It allows us to get connected, start the day together. We're all getting the benefits of that sunlight. We're all getting the benefits of that movement. So the entire family is in a better mood for the rest of the day, Chuck. It's
That's
a
a
beautiful
beautiful
thing,
thing. Yeah.
right? Sometimes I strap on my ruck vest. So, like, what is a ruck vest? It's a weighted vest. You don't need to do too much, but like I'll strap on my ruck vest. It's not to like make myself sweaty and exhausted, but instead it's just sort of helping me to get the heart pumping and the breath work going a little bit more. So, and all these things are basically contributing to me feeling my best in the morning.
How heavy is your ruck vest?
I have two different ruck vests, and most of the time I go with the 20 pound. So for me, that's about a 10% body weight. And if I go with the 40 pounds, that's closer to a 20% body weight. It does feel like it's pushing a little bit. So
Yeah.
I would recommend to people to start at 5% and work your way up.
Yeah. 40 pounds. That's a hefty ruck. That's a hefty ruck vest, sir.
I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big Polsky Chuck. So
I know you. You are one tall drink of water, friend. But bottom line here, what you're talking about is one habit, multiple wins. In that case, your body wins. And that's exactly what we want. But what we haven't really talked about yet is food, right? Food seems to be paramount. That's what everybody puts the premium on. And this actually surprises a lot of people, I think, as well, when it comes to food here.
Look, this whole time we have been talking about these players that keep coming up that were like the centerpiece of my book Plant Power Plus. We're talking about the microbiome, the gut barrier, the immune system, right? And the ways in which our circadian rhythm affects these things. You don't think food is part of our circadian rhythm? Of course it is. And what we want to do is basically send the signal to those microbes early in the day with our food choices to basically say, yo, it's daytime. You can wake up now. You can get to work now. And the way that we do that is with fiber.
Why am I not surprised to hear that come out of your mouth? But correct me if I'm wrong here. Fiber, as you're alluding to here, isn't just about the amount that you're eating. The timing is also going to be critical.
Yes, this is the thing that people like often overlook and forget is they're just so working on a 24-hour level, how many grams of fiber or how many different plants did I eat? I'm not saying those things are important. They are important, but timing matters too. And early fiber is going to basically feed those microbes, give them the strength that they need for optimal function, get the short chain fatty acids on board right now. And when those short chain fatty acids get on board in the morning, it's basically setting you up for a healthy gut barrier, reduced immune system, and also satiety.
But what if you wake up and we've all had these mornings and you're just not hungry and breakfast is the furthest thing from your mind?
I mean, I think this is where like going small, like you don't have to have a massive meal. I'm not trying to make that argument. So you could do a smoothie, you could go with a piece of fruit. I also think like this is the perfect opportunity for a daily prebiotic supplement like 38 Terra Daily Microbiome Nutrition. Because basically, what you're looking for here is consistency and timing. And this can be a great way to build that consistency and timing through simple interventions like that.
All right. I want to go back and talk about coffee for a second, if you'll indulge me, because as you know, like I'm a big coffee guy. You obviously are, chief coffee pumbaa of the universe. But people really, I mean, let's be honest about this, Dr. B. Like people care about their coffee, right? I mean, they absolutely adore coffee.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm very biased, but the science is quite clear. First of all, like coffee clearly stimulates motility, but it also provides both polyphenols and soluble fiber that feed our gut microbes.
But alas, my friend, there happens to be a catch.
Yes, because like I think there are many of us that have experienced the downsides of coffee where like the stimulation can be too much or it can lead to you having urgent diarrhea or acid reflux. So I actually think like our morning coffee, I said, let's push it back. Okay. So now we've done our walk, we've done our like, we've gotten our sunlight, and now let's take our cup of coffee and let's enjoy it in a peaceful, relaxing way. So like not flipping through Twitter, but instead having your cup of coffee and doing some breath work, meditating, reflecting on your day, what's coming, prayer, reading scripture. Like these are ways that we can both enjoy our coffee and simultaneously get into a very relaxed, peaceful frame of mind.
And I can tell you again, just from my personal experience, throughout the last 3 years in my health journey, like I had to take coffee off of the plate for a long time because I was stuck in fight or flight mode, right? Just constant cortisol, stress, stress, stress. But when I was able to safely reintroduce it, I remember distinctly, it was early on in my reintroduction to coffee. We were doing an expo together up in Vancouver or Toronto, one of those cities. And we were just at a local cafe and we talked for hours, no problem. Come home, I would go to Starbucks. I wouldn't bring my laptop. I wouldn't do work. I would just, do my New York Times games every morning, whether it be Wordle or, whatever they got on there. And I would just like be totally relaxed and loving every sip of that coffee, man. But if you're stuck in that fight or flight mode or you're late for a flight and your stress levels are already up, that's the time that you might want to avoid it.
That makes a ton of sense to me, Chuck.
All right. So before anyone listens and they start thinking to themselves, well, this all sounds great, but I've already really jacked up my morning. Let's actually zoom out for a second, Dr. B. Indulge me here. So if someone only has the bandwidth to get only a few of these things right that we've been talking about, what actually would you say matters the most?
Okay, let's consolidate, Chuck. So we don't need to, be like let perfection stand in the way of getting the maximum return, most bang for our buck. So to me, if it's three things, number one, consistent wake time, right? Like you can establish control over this. Set the time that you're going to plan to wake up on a daily basis. This allows so many other things to fall in alignment around that. Number two, make it such an important priority that you're going to get your light and exercise stack in the morning. You got to make the stack, put it together, and you got to get it done. Even if it's like literally doing squat thrusts in front of the 10,000 lux light, right? Like you could do body weight exercises indoors in front of the light. You can get outside and take your walk. But if you do this, you will feel the benefit the rest of the day. And the last thing is get that first dose of fiber in, whether that's a smoothie or it's a supplement. To me, consistent wake time, light and exercise stack, and fiber exposure, you have set up the rest of your day.
So what you're describing here for like setting up the day quite well, not necessarily the perfect morning, but definitely a consistent one.
Yeah, I mean, biology responds to patterns. You get the main ones done, and then the lesser ones, less of a big deal. Don't worry about it.
All right. So this feels like the big moment people are asking, well, good, we've got the steps, but which one comes first? Where do I start?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, like this is chapter 6 of my new book, Plant Powered Plus, which is basically an entire big conversation about chronotherapy. So everything that we've been discussing here today, Chuck, are basically different forms of chronotherapy, which means creating alignment within your circadian rhythm so that your bodily functions can be like most on point throughout the entire day. So to me, the ideal starting point is Plant Powered Plus, because that book gives you everything that we've discussed in this episode and so much more, and then lays out the protocol in the back that allows you to basically know, here are the steps that I'm going to take. Now, that being said, you can complement that, or a good starting point can be a resource that I've created called the Gut Clock. So the Gut Clock is actually an ebook that I created on this topic that we're discussing today, and it's available for free download. You basically just need to come to my website, theguthealthmd.com, join the email list, and then you'll be able to download the Gut Clock ebook.
All right. So that's the gut clock, but now let's activate the play clock. It's counting down. So take us home.
The key points here, from my perspective, is the realization that we are inherently circadian creatures, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. That our body, our cells, our genetic code, and our microbiome are all powerfully influenced by our circadian rhythm. And there is a pattern. And the pattern that we're looking to achieve is high cortisol, high serotonin, low melatonin. And we can fulfill and accomplish that with these simple, actionable tools that include consistent wake times, light exposure plus exercise, the stack, and lastly, getting fiber exposure in the morning, which could be 38 Tera DMN, or a smoothie, or both.
All right, my friends. So you may be wondering to yourself right now, well, these boys are on point, but you only got the morning set. What about nighttime? Well, this is why I think the next episode is going to be right up your alley. Stay tuned for part 2 of that right here on the Gut Insiders, because for today, we are fresh out of time. But if you think that this episode helped you rethink your mornings, take your health to that next level, hit subscribe, share this episode with a friend, tell a friend, and, someone that is in your life who may need a better start to your day. For the Gut Insiders, my friends, I'm Chuck Carroll. He's Dr. B, and we will talk to you next time.
Peace.